Greetings! Allow me to welcome you to For the Love of Fiction, a podcast dedicated to discussing story and character across a wide range of mediums. I am your host, Gavin Groves, and with me is my co-host, Mr. Mark Tobit.
Evening, dude.
Hello, mate. How you doing?
It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has been a while, mate. You have a good Christmas.
Yeah, I had a nice Christmas. You're talking to a guy that had his previous 3 Christmases cancelled by COVID, so this was the first time I got to see family. So.
Oh, of course. You were lucky this year. You were lucky, and a good New Year's as well.
Yeah, it was very good all around. I mean, New Year's was quiet, and that's just how I like it.
I had a pretty quiet one this year, to be honest with you. I hate queuing for drinks. And New Year's is.
Yeah, I'm famous for it, man. Yeah.
Oh, I just hate it so much in my old age, you know. But anyway, as with the previous episodes of the pod, we usually start off with a little catch up because me and Mark haven't spoken for a couple of weeks about what we've been up to. Anyway, I thought we'd dedicate a whole episode to it, Mark. So I've given him a mandate. He's got a list of stuff to talk about. Is that right, Mark?
I do indeed.
Excellent. So, not going to waste any time, and I'm going to say to you, so, have you watched any TV recently?
Yes, in actual fact, I have.
Oh, yeah?
There's one that's been popping up everywhere recently. It went for a massive push because not too long ago.
Okay.
And in my research, the 3rd season's already been confirmed.
Okay.
It's on Disney Plus. It's a TV show called The Bear.
The Bear?
Yes. It's stars a character that an actor that I'm going to be following a lot in the future because he is phenomenal in this show. A gentleman called Jeremy Allen White, one that you want to keep an eye on yourself because he's going to be starring in that Iron Claw movie that's going to be coming out soon.
Oh, yes. I saw the trailer for that at the cinema like last month, and I knew about the film anyway in the upcoming, you know, but I'm interested in that. I really am.
Yeah, well, the cast looks good for that movie.
Yeah.
And this man specifically, after seeing what he did in this TV show, he's one to keep an eye on.
Okay. So what is The Bear? What genre is it? I have no idea. I have no idea what it is.
Oh, it's a drama set in Chicago, and it's all about a man played by Jeremy Allen White called Carmen Bizzotto, who is a world-class chef. And he goes to sort of like the highest school and everything. He is studying to be a top-class like Michelin star chef. And due to the death of his brother, he's called back home to work in his brother's Italian meat sandwich shop.
Oh.
To keep the family business running with his other siblings.
Okay.
And that is pretty much the start of it. It's the fact he's come back to a shop that's failing and it's in debt. It owes debts to the local mafia. Well, I say mafia, like the loan sharks. And it's barely treading water. He is doing everything he can to hustle to keep his shop alive. And it is just about the day-to-day life of this man working in the kitchen with all these assorted different characters, all of which have personalities and are very interesting in their own right. And the fact that, well, I mean, I imagine you can appreciate this, the pressure of working in a kitchen where it can make the best of friends turn on each other.
Indeed. I have been a chef on this, for 20 years. And yes, I'm very aware of heat turning people crazy in a commercial kitchen. It has happened.
I feel this one I might do a bit of a personal recommendation to you, just because I'm sure you can appreciate certain aspects of the story.
Okay.
You can understand people's motives. Maybe people that would be cool-headed under certain circumstances can suddenly flip and throw a frying pan across a room.
Yeah, I've met a wide variety of people over the years because of this trade. You know, I've seen people go completely crazy. I've seen people who are actually like incredibly calm and collected under pressure, and they're often like the best chefs. And I've also seen people who are so fucking useless that I just wouldn't do it. You wouldn't be. You'd be amazed. You'd be amazed at the caliber I've seen. Food is a trade that anyone can do, basically, and because of that, you meet all kinds of people in it. Anyway, sorry. So it's ripe for narrative and characterization, that's for sure. You know, in the same way with Father Ted, you know how I like it. He mocks Catholicism in a way with its wide variety of, I want to. Are they even characters half the time? They're more like cartoon characters in that show, really. But there is, you could do that as well with chefs, that's for sure. Anyway, so how many episodes is it?
Off the top of my head, I think it's about 10 to 12 episodes.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember exactly, but
It's a drama, not a comedy. You mean?
It's a drama, but it does have comical elements to it.
Oh, right, okay.
And the titular bear that the title's referring to is the way in which the main character manifests his anxiety and rage. That he has night terrors and dreams where he manifests it all into for one instance, he has a dream of being on a TV cooking show where he's doing the same job and it's all falling apart around him whilst he's performing for an audience. And this bear is prowling through the shadows, staring at him, and it's how he manifests all of his anger and rage. He knows this thing could potentially consume him, and it's him working out how to tame it. It's an interesting show. It really does build it up. There is an overarching storyline that takes place over this first season, and it goes straight into season 2 with the setup and everything. It runs straight through. And in my researches, I don't pay much attention to online reviews in terms of like the general trend of how they're reviewing it. However, one thing I think is a testament to this show is that right now on Rotten Tomatoes, it's at 99%.
Is that what, critics or viewers?
That's critics. Viewers are 93%.
That's good. That's good that they're both the same.
And the critics have given it 100% to season 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, even if you talk about how sort of like people can sometimes jump on the hype train, that still says something about the show. It is a well-filmed show, and it is very engaging to watch. I mean, one sequence had, for instance, one character getting a positive review in the newspaper. And the main character turns and exudes that this may not be as good a thing as you think it is. And she goes, well, what are you talking about? Good press is fantastic for the kitchen. And they deal with online orders. And then literally the moment the clock ticks over for their kitchen to open, their printer starts just spitting out dozens upon dozens of orders because of the positive press they got to go, we don't have anywhere near enough people to handle the amount of food that you've just put on our plate. And it's all about the pressure and how everything like ramps up after what would you think would be a good thing for a kitchen turns into potentially a negative thing.
Okay.
It's an interesting show. I wholeheartedly recommend.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Just recently acquired Twisted Metal actually to watch. So I watched. I'm not going to talk about it today. So that's one that you've recommended that I'm going to be getting back to you about. I did watch the first episode, so I'm going to save that. But there is another thing I watched recently, actually, that you recommended that you'll be very happy that I've watched, and that is the Netflix live-action One Piece.
Ooh.
Yes. You brought this up a few episodes ago, so...
Yeah. You're not one who's actually seen much of the animated or the manga, are you?
I have seen like bits and pieces of like the first 20-odd episodes of the anime a long time ago. I am aware of like the basic setup and of the characters through chatting to you and Nathan, who you used to work with.
He was the man who introduced it to me back in the day.
That's right. Hi, Nathan, if you're listening.
Nathan.
He has listened to us. I don't know if he still is, but he has. He better still be listening. Anyway, he better be. Anyway, and just through like talking to you guys and listening to you guys over the years, I've sort of absorbed the general story here and there. But obviously, I'm not as educated in it as you all here. I've not watched all of it. I don't really know what goes on. I just sort of have the basic idea of the setup and whatnot. So, I know I didn't watch Cowboy Bebop because I just looked at it and went, maybe. And then the reviews came out. And I'm not one to trust reviews for the most part. But when this is like...
Oh, universally panned.
So. Exactly. And Cowboy Bebop is... It's kind of an interesting show because it's lauded, isn't it, as being one of the best anime TV shows of all time.
Yeah.
But it's very low-key in compared to a lot of other things. It's quite adult and, well, some of it is episodic to a degree. Mm-hmm. As someone who's watched anime since he was 9, near enough, like, I liked it, but it didn't blow my mind. So I just thought it was just good, And really, actually, quite ripe for live-action adaptation because of how Western its sensibilities are, really, and how tame it is and not crazy and how well told the story is. And yet all the reviews said that the general discourse, let's say, online about that show was that they changed too much of it as well. Am I right? Have you watched it?
What, the live-action Bebop?
Yes.
Yeah, I've watched some of the live-action Bebop, and I went in positive. I wanted to love the show. I really did. I mean, I forget the name of the actor who plays Spike, and I think
we had this. Yes.
Yeah, I think that he potentially could have been the part, but apparently, the story was adapted beyond.
They changed it, didn't they? And like completely
so,
messed around with it, and people were like, "Why? Why?" Which is interesting when it comes to One Piece, because I read recently that artist and writer of the original manga, Oda, was involved in the TV show, right?
Yeah.
He basically had the last say about everything, and that's one of the reasons why it is. I remember you saying before that they sort of crammed the first 40, 50 episodes of the anime into an 8-episode series. Is that correct?
Yeah, they condensed it significantly.
Which is fine. But as someone who's a fringe viewer, let's say, of One Piece in general, like it felt like they really captured the tone of and the spirit. The spirit.
It's the guy that's playing Luffy, hasn't he? Just got that spirit?
Hold. Yeah, that's what it is. One Piece it's a shonen in the end. It's a manga for boys, and it's got loads of fighting in it, and they all get new powers, and they all call the names of their special moves out and whatever.
Even like Lampshade that at one point where they talk about shouting out your moves is stupid.
in the live action series, yes. Which I don't know, whatever. It's whatever, fine, whatever. I mean, they do it a little bit, like the fight sequences are like halved, near enough across the board because it's this is a TV series. It's a TV series is more about drama and story arcs, and I really enjoyed it. I find One Piece in general very light and fluffy, and I'm not invested in it. Let's say on a deep level, and I never have been. There's a reason why. Of like the early 2000s, big hit anime series, Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece, I probably watched more Bleach than the other two because Bleach was just more dramatically satisfying to me. Yeah. And Naruto was interesting, but again, became very light eventually for me personally. Obviously, all the filler. And One Piece was just the lighter of the three. So, but I enjoyed it. As you said, I'm going to murder his name, Inaki Godoy. Is that you say his name? Who plays Monkey D. Luffy?
I couldn't say it off the top of my head. No, I haven't got it to mind.
Regardless, he definitely captures the spirit of the character. There's a playfulness, a sense of fun, a joy to just, obviously there's a degree of naivety there because it's just someone, maybe I'm old and cynical, but someone that positive is almost impossible to believe to be realistic, But this is a fictional television show based on a boy
that's always been a hallmark of his, that he is.
That's what he is.
Everything.
Absolutely, and that's fine. That because I found that I became more and more invested in the show as the series went on because Luffy is not an interesting character, really, at all, to me, and he never has been because of his nature. Yes, he takes things seriously when he needs to, when he has to. Fine. But it's the surrounding cast that I've always found more interesting. Nami's arc is like the centerpiece of the entire series, really, isn't it? Which is, I read that they changed a little bit, but mainly was there, and it is good. It's a good character arc, really.
For me though, the breakout character of the entire show is Buggy the Clown.
Hold tight. Well, yeah. I mean, I can't remember what he's like in the anime/manga. I've got no idea, but I mean, he was fine as far as I was concerned. Why was he a breakout for you personally?
I know. I found him immensely entertaining out of the show. He was not quite Deadpool fourth wall leaning sort of like style of character, but I just found him entertaining to watch. And knowing what comes later for that character, because he isn't a villain of the week. He is in it to present day.
Yes, that's it. That's suggested, isn't it? He is villain of the week at first, and then towards the end of the series, he becomes a recurring character.
And he's always been very entertaining to watch, reading about in the manga. So I don't know if they'll ever make it as far as the manga and the anime have run. I don't.
As we've said, a good writer will look at the best plot points and then draw a through line. So I'm sure they are doing another season. This has been the most successful Netflix series of all time, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm sure they'll do another one. But then, another character obviously is Zoro, who I remember very well. played by, McKenny, is that you say his name? The son of Sonny Chibber. That's a random fact I discovered recently. And, he was great, the silent, wounded swordsman. He's very, very effective. But for me, I have to say, it's when the chefs appear when I really got into it.
Oh, Sanji, yes.
And what's his name? I'm going to have to cut this out because I've forgotten his name. It's Craig Fairbrass.
Oh, as
Zeph. I love Craig Fairbrass.
I've only ever seen him in gangster movies
and EastEnders. But yes, he is. He's famous for talking like this. I'll come and get you. I'm going to get you.
And he fits it so well, though. That was
just yeah. I mean, I don't know if Zeph is that way inclined in the manga or the anime. I don't know, but it just worked, and it really, really worked for me. So yeah, I really enjoyed this actually. Yeah, overall, I'll definitely give the second season a go. Because like I said, I find Luffy has got his origin story and his backstory, but it's not very interesting. I think he's like Goku essentially, in Dragon Ball. Like he's just very one-dimensional from what I've seen anyway so far. I'm sure maybe later on.
Goku, his strength is in the people that he draws around him.
Yes, and he's like the positive thing that glues them together, and it's the other characters that are interesting, that add color. So as I imagine this series goes on and they add more and more characters and more color, it will become more and more interesting, I imagine. But for a first season, I really enjoyed this. So definitely going to be checking this out again when they finally get around to doing season 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, good stuff. So you watched any good films recently, Mark?
Oh, I watched a couple. I say good. I watched some movies.
Oh right, okay.
Let's start with the positives.
Okay.
So first things first. Me and my wife went to see Wonka in the cinema.
Oh, okay. So I was kind of interested in this actually, not like to the point where I wanted to go and see it at the cinema, but I saw the trailers and I thought it looks okay.
Yeah. Well, Wonka is something that's close to my heart. I mean, I've been reading for a long time. I was always known as a bookworm when I was a kid, and it was between Roald Dahl and Enid Blyton in terms of the works that I devoured as a child. So, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is something that's very close to my heart.
How old were you when you read it?
I couldn't have been. I wasn't even in like double figures. I had access to Roald Dahl like about 6, 7, 8 years old. So, and Wonka was the one that stays with you. I read both of them, including Wonka and the Great Glass Elevator, or Charlie and the Great Glass. And I love those books. And I actually didn't watch the Gene Wilder version until a couple of years later. And that was incredible for me. I really love that movie. Everything about it it is a strong part of childhood innocence for me in terms of movies I watched as a child.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about the Gene Wilder film personally. It's been a long time since I've seen it. Was you a fan of the Tim Burton film?
I was not.
No. I saw it at the cinema, and I thought that aesthetically it was quite good, and I thought that Johnny Depp was awful in it. But I thought that he captured the children very well. I thought they were really funny.
Yeah, the kids were fine, and even some of the music was catchy, although not on the same level as the original.
I can't remember. I imagine it was probably Elfman. Yeah. But I mean, Wonka is very much a story about children, isn't it? And about how awful they are. And I thought that is... It's funny in how in a lot of Tim Burton's adaptions, he zeroes in on what he finds most interesting. And that's always the best part of said adaptation. But everything else all sort of becomes rubbish. Or less developed, let's say. Like in Batman, he was clearly less interested in Batman. And more interested in the villains, and it's almost like the kids were the most interesting part of Wonka and his Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And with Wonka, it's just like he got drunk with Johnny Depp and said, "Do you know what? You just do what you want. You just get drunk, walk on, and I'll film you."
Yeah, a bit of that Jack Sparrow shit you were doing a couple of years back.
Was it before or after? I'm not sure.
No, I think it was after, but yeah.
It is just, I don't know. It's almost like you played him too childlike. And I think Wonka always is supposed to be quite childlike, but that was just irritating.
But no, Wonka is meant to have an edge.
Yes, that's it. That's right. Yes.
I mean, Wilder captured it perfectly in terms of he had that moment where he could just with his eyes he could suddenly seem really threatening.
Yes.
Even though he's meant to be making your dreams come true.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that's a point they missed in the Tim Burton version.
Yes. Yes. Definitely. You see, if I say his name right, hopefully I will. It's Timothy Chalamet, I guess.
That's how I intended to pronounce it.
Yeah, like I've only ever seen him in June, and obviously in June, you know, Paul, the character who plays the protagonist, Paul, is like he is that character. Let's say the character's a character. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but he's a character that is sort of in the narrative, being transported along the narrative, and he doesn't really have a lot of agency until a certain point in the story. But I think that Chalamet does a very good job of
humanizing him.
Yeah, not just humanizing him, but playing a character that there's more to them on a surface level. I don't know. I can't really explain it. We will be doing a June episode, no doubt, for the coming film, and I'll be rewatching the film. But I definitely felt like there was an edge, let's say, to Chalamet's Paul, and there was certainly an amount of depth to his performance. Like there's always something more to him. And I think actually when I saw that he was casted as Wonka, I actually thought, you know what? I'm kind of interested. Interested to see how he pulls it off. So what was your opinion of this movie?
Oh, it was a very strong like, man. I really enjoyed this movie.
Really? Okay.
It's not to say that I don't have one or two like minor criticisms about it, but
okay.
The movie itself is directed by Paul King, and he's responsible for the likes of Paddington. And
I haven't seen Paddington, right? But people say they like it. He also unfortunately made The Mighty Boosh, which I detest greatly. So strong dislike for that series. You know, but you know, who knows?
Well, for me personally, Paddington, whilst I'm very much not the demographic that movie is aimed at, I find it very heartwarming. It's hard.
Yes, this is what I heard.
It's just it's a movie that's very difficult to hate.
Mm-hmm.
You can't because it doesn't use anything like pop culture. It doesn't date itself.
Thank God.
Purely just
tells a story, right?
Yeah.
Who would have thought that would happen in 2022, 2021, 2023? Just a story. Oh, unbelievable.
And a lot of that style translates into this movie as well, in that it's a movie which it somewhat is timeless because it doesn't try and date itself to any specific year or anything. It's a very interesting
it's timeless story, isn't it? It can be a timeless world.
Yeah, and it's got a fantastic cast of different British actors. So I'm not going to list them, but you'll be watching it and be going, I recognise that guy, I recognise that guy, I recognise that girl. It's very interesting to watch all these people just bounce off each other, and everyone is chewing the scenery in some fashion or another. And they do it in the right way. They're not trying to steal the scene, they're trying to elevate the scene. And it also portrays a Wonka who's only just got back from his world travels. Mm-hmm. So Chalamet portrays him as more of an innocent and naive man. One who still very much sees the good in everybody.
I think there's always been that part to his character as well, though. Wonka is an incredibly complex creation, isn't he? So, like, a great performance of Wonka has to capture that. The childlike wonder and innocence, and yet also the resentment as well, obviously. You know, it's a complicated character to get right. Very complicated.
This movie kind of suggests where a lot of that resentment came from.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
That he isn't that resentful to begin with. Mm-hmm. That this is the sort of events and maybe stuff that happened later. I don't know if the sequel is on the cards, but things happen in this movie that you realise, this would be the making of somebody in terms of their perspective on the world. Mm-hmm. Especially, and it was just a very, very enjoyable movie. However, I find Chalamet shined best when he wasn't trying to emulate Wilder. And it is Wilder that he is trying to it's that Wonka that he is trying to emulate.
Well, you don't know if that's direction or not, though, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean they're not. It's utilizes nostalgia in the right ways. Mm-hmm. There is a song that comes from the original movie.
It's fine.
Which come with me and you'll see all that. But I find that when he does stuff like that, it wasn't working as strongly for me as when he was doing his own thing with the character.
Of course.
I mean, there is one scene where you see him express sort of like he's in utter incredulousness at the fact that a person's never tasted chocolate before. And you can see, like, you can see it in his eyes that he is just utterly bewildered by the aspect of someone who hasn't appreciated chocolate before. And he does it in the way, almost to the point where he gets angry with them that they haven't enjoyed it. And he then immediately goes about his part way to rectify this situation and make sure they can appreciate it as well. Mm-hmm. It's little touches like that I actually really liked. And it was, having seen him in Dune, this is very much a departure from that style of character. This is someone who is a lot more present. They're a lot more the center of the scene rather than watching the scene happen to them. So, all in all, it was a very good movie. It is a strong recommendation on my part.
All right, okay. I'm definitely interested in getting around to it at some point. Well, I have to say, in the during the Christmas period, I watched a bit of a mixture. Some films I've watched, you could say, are kind of relevant to Christmas. Some not so much. This first one I'm going to bring up, not very relevant. I watched the original 1931 Dracula. The Universal Dracula, should I say. Have you ever seen this before?
No. Who is it who plays Dracula in that?
It is Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
He basically, set the template. Although apparently he was performing, because this film, obviously you worked the Bram Stoker's book, and then there was the expressionist Nosferatu film, which was not made with the permission of the Stoker estate, and therefore was, sued by the estate, and then they had to destroy all the copies. The fact that it even exists today is luck. And then this film was actually made with the blessing of the Stoker estate, and it is adapted from a stage version of which Bela Lugosi was a part of. And I'm quite partial to the odd old black and white movie. Quite a lot of old black and white movies, it turns out, because I just like the tone, the simplicity. In this film is there are no special effects. Okay, there is a special effect. It's a bat, that a giant furry bat that's hung above the camera and flapped around from string. You don't see I don't think Dracula bares his fangs once in the entire film. When he actually goes to bite, the camera pans away. When he transforms for a bat, it there's cameras flicking back and forwards and whatever. There's nothing at all. And there's lots of strange shots of him looking at the camera and the light shining on his eyes, looking all moody. It's hard to. It's really, really hard to sort of understand whether or not this was a scary movie when it came out. It was billed as a chiller, let's say, but it's certainly not scary now. But what it does is an abundance of atmosphere. As I say, it's based on a play version rather than the actual novel, and you have the character of Reinfeld, who's utterly unhinged and actually really, really well done. Dwight Fry, is the actor's name. He's Dracula's first victim, and he goes to that you see on screen. He goes to the castle, and he's dealing with Dracula buying land, much like in the original book, but it's Jonathan Harker, isn't it, in the book? Because the whole story is written, it's an epistolary novel from Jonathan Harker's perspective. And he's the first one that's transformed, let's say, transforms by Dracula's wives. And I the best bits of the movie are all the bits that are set in Castle Dracula itself in Transylvania. And while it's very clear there are only two sets, the stairs and the lobby and the bedroom, actually. So that's the lobby and the bedroom are one set, because there's a wall and a doorway through it. Just the atmosphere of it, absolutely loved the gothic atmosphere, the stark black and white photography, the cobwebs everywhere, the dingy, wet, damp stone, steps and walls, the way Bela Lugosi holds himself.
Well, he set the tone for who Dracula was going to be for the rest of the genre, really, wasn't
Absolutely. You know, there's a bit which they took from, which is not in the book apparently, but where Ryan Field cuts himself, and Dracula like goes to have he's like enticed by the blood, and then then a cross sort of falls in front of Ryan Field, and Dracula's that noise, and that exact noise is exactly the same. It's kind of crazy, really. I mean, Nosferatu is he's 102 years old as we speak now. This one is nearly 100 years old, so
jeez.
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. 75 minutes as well, short as anything. Absolutely, really enjoyed it, and I actually really want to sort of get through a few of these classic movies. I'm sort of jumping forward. I'm not going to speak about it later, like when we get to books, but it's because I've been reading. My favorite film critic is Roger Ebert. I may have mentioned before, and he's got a series of books called The Great Movies, which he rewrites reviews that he's written on films that he's adored. And writes essays, and this was in it. And it made me go, do you know what? I've really got to get around to watching this movie, Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein as well. I need to get around to watching. So yeah, this was a really cool curiosity for me. I don't know what it is, but Dracula has always been my favorite of the Universal monsters. Can you say who your favorite Universal monster was, Mark, if you have one?
I'm going to be honest, it's probably Dracula as well. Not to say take anything else away from likes of Mummy, Werewolf, all that sort of Frankenstein, all that sort of stuff, but Dracula always had a certain level of cool.
Yes, so Dracula was always my favourite. As I mentioned, my brother Adam, we would always have our separate favourites because we could never like the same things. He was a Frankenstein man. I remember we had these. We were bought for Christmas one year. These pen tops, these little plastic pen tops, and I had like a Dracula one, and Adam had a Frankenstein one, and you like twist them, and they like their mouths would move and stuff. So yeah, always, I don't know what it is. Always loved Dracula. Always been a big fan of that design. I mean, the design that you see in this, the version that Bela Lugosi plays, is not really what you see in anything else. That's like more book accurate, like like Bram Stoker's Dracula, for example.
Well, like the collar and the cloak and everything.
Yes, it's very much like exclusive to this rendition of Bela Lugosi's Dracula, but I bloody love it, I love it. So, anything out? Any other films?
Oh, I've got a couple more yet to go.
Cool.
Keeping it positive.
Okay.
Talking about movies that I'm not necessarily the target demographic of.
Okay.
I watched the Barbie movie.
Oh, right. Okay. What do you think?
I also strongly enjoyed this movie as well. I mean, as much as appreciation I could take from a movie like this, at the end of the day, it is a movie that is aimed at children. However, I had read a couple of reviews.
Isn't there a movie that's also aimed at women?
Yeah.
For why?
But I'd heard that it's a movie that's actually quite self-aware, and I've just curiosity got the better of me. I've always been a sucker for a good meta movie.
Well, here's a culturally important film in 2023, so one must, observe.
And if you're truly honest, Barbie is somewhat, not significantly, but it is a little bit of a problematic concept, especially in modern day times. And it addresses that. It addresses the fact that essentially this is a toy that's beginning and end is to teach girls and women to be pretty.
Mm.
And it really does delve into the concept of that to a degree. It's a movie directed by a woman called Greta Gerwig, and it's got Margot Robbie in it and Ryan Gosling. And for me, Ryan Gosling, it was fucking hilarious in this.
I've heard he's really good in it.
I mean, this is a movie that the role even that you have to lean all the way into it in order to achieve some of the laughs that he gets.
Ken, isn't he? He plays Ken, right?
And he utterly nails it. I mean, we both know that he is a very accomplished actor.
He's a very accomplished comedic actor as well.
Yes, he knows comedy. He's not afraid to be the butt of the joke in order to get the joke across.
I've seen him in plenty of serious films as well, and he is a very good dramatic actor, but his comedic ability is also like ridiculous.
Still remember him in The Nice Guys.
The Nice Guys. What?
Yep.
My God.
That was a brilliant movie.
Yeah. Great movie. So funny.
And here he is on top form. You can see he just dives into the role in order to just personify Ken, which you wouldn't have thought there'd be much depth to the role of Ken, but he manages to find something there, and it's fun to watch him and Margot Robbie. And we both know Margot Robbie is a very funny actress.
Yeah, she's good. She's good in the right role.
Yeah. I mean, as proven in the past with her outings with Harley Quinn, it can be dependent on the director.
Of course.
She's had some brilliant outings as Harley Quinn. She's also had some not so brilliant ones.
Of course.
But that is in no part her fault. We've seen her do Harley Quinn well.
Yeah.
And here she's just encompassing another character, and she seems to be having fun with it as well. And the two of them together are just funny as all hell. The thing about this movie is that there is a lot of politics around it. I'm not going to delve into that because a lot of that is rather toxic. I haven't got any interest in that sort of conversation. I just watched this.
I did want to ask you, to be honest. Like, I've heard people say that this is a feminist movie. I've heard people say this is a post-feminist movie, and I've heard people say this is an anti-feminist movie. I've heard so many different interpretations of it. So, can you tell me what you think is how it pitches itself, or is it too complex an answer?
I can see where people would draw those conclusions on every single aspect of
yeah.
But that's the point. It isn't highlighting one over the other at any significant point. It's there's no real bad guys in it or anything like that. It is just different points of view, and that's
as it should be, though.
That's what leads to the conflict, and it was interesting. I mean, I can see, at the end of the day, Barbie can be said to be a feminist product. It can also be said to be an anti-feminist product in itself.
Yes, of course, depending on which
side of
the fence you're on. What kind of feminist you are. There are different points and parts of it, obviously, but
they even don't shy away from even going into Barbie's history and actually highlighting some of the more sort of like questionable iterations of her back in the 50s and 60s, for instance.
Good. That's good. Like I say, I like the idea that it is bringing a balanced perspective to the table, from the sounds of things, anyway.
Yeah, and it's also got Will Ferrell in it, and I like Will Ferrell. He's always funny. He only plays one character, but he does do him pretty well. And he does it pretty well in this as well, and he's another foil for the characters to bounce off of.
So what's this like stab at like the classic Barbie concept then that you were just talking about before I interrupted you so rudely?
Well, they make references to early versions of Barbie that were coming out during the 60s and 70s, such as one version of Barbie that's pregnant, and another that if you move her arms, her breasts swell. Things like that. They actually address that as being characters in this story, which they kind of, we don't really like to talk about her. And they even have one called Weird Barbie.
What? Okay.
Played by Kate McKinnon, who is a Barbie who she's one that's been abused by her owner. She had her hair cut, torched, and she's been drawn all over with crayon, and she's gone a little crazy. But she's still a Barbie, and she has that look of a Barbie that has been mishandled and used in the wrong ways for years. And she becomes something of a shaman to the other Barbies, because there are multiple Barbies.
Okay.
And she's funny as well. Like, it's, as I say, I'm not going to sort of like gush about this movie too much, but I am going to say that I was a lot more entertained than I expected to be.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, another film that I watched over the last couple of weeks is a film I hope you've seen. I'd be incredibly disappointed in you if you hadn't seen it. I'm going to be honest. And that is the 1985 supernatural coming-of-age comedy starring Michael J. Fox, Teen Wolf.
Come on, man. That scene with his dad in the bathroom.
It's the best. It's the best scene. That's the best scene. What does he say? You're gonna. All right, Dad. You asked for it.
I remember that's one of the first times I can remember crying with laughter.
Yeah. Oh, I suppose I think you've got a few questions.
It's just that, a deadpan look of his father and
so good. It's so good. Yes, this is a story. This is, if you haven't seen it, shame on you, because it's a classic American coming of age. Teenager boy. Jocks, bullies, school. Tropey as hell film, but the main character's a werewolf and doesn't know it. And it comes from a family of werewolves, and give me a keg of beer.
And the backflips on top of the van as it's driving on the road, and
Styles, the character Styles, like he's one of his best friends. He wears weird as fuck glasses, like t-shirts with weird, like uncool phrases on them. It's like someone not from the 80s thought what was cool in the 80s and created this character and then called him Styles to make you think he's stylish. I mean, if he was cool in the 80s, it was quite worrying, to be honest with you. But yeah, Michael J. Fox's character, he's a basketball player, and he fancies like the actress who has the horrible boyfriend and whatever, and has to sort of learn that his best friend, who is in love with him, is the real love of his life. And it's when he becomes the wolf by accident, doesn't he? And then he sort of turns into this, rather than like everyone in the school being terrified of him, he becomes like the wolf celebrity, and he's suddenly walking down the street going, "Hey!"
Yeah, but he turns into sort of like a Wolfie Fonz, doesn't he?
That's right. And he's kicking ass in the basketball games.
Because as we know, werewolves are superior at basketball.
Of course. Yeah. Like he ends up like running every game and never passing the ball, and like he's got to learn to like control the wolf. It actually, the father actually says to him, "With great power comes great responsibility," or to some version of that. I'm not joking. He actually says something like that. I have to know, because I tell you, little tidbit for you. This was written by Jeff Loeb.
Well, comic book writer Jeff Loeb.
Yes. The same.
Is he copying his own notes on that one?
I don't know, because he did a lot of Spider-Man, didn't he? Obviously, He did like some of the best Batman stories with The Long Halloween, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But he also did a lot. Was it? Yeah, it was Long Halloween. He did quite a lot of Spider-Man, didn't he? As well. So yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know how much he had to do with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, but I mean, yeah. Maybe we can trace back all superhero movies to this moment, to Teen Wolf. Can you imagine Teen Wolf in the Avengers?
It's the linchpin that holds them together, man.
Interestingly, though, Michael J. Fox, right? He this film was released the same year as Back to the Future, and obviously, Back to the Future is the film that made him. This film, on a budget of $4 million, made 30, so it made money, but I'm pretty sure it didn't make the money that Back to the Future did.
No.
And his performance is, I don't know, it's okay. It's okay.
He's got natural charisma.
He has, yes. I
mean, you can see it in most of the movies he was in during that era.
The years of TV show experience.
Yeah, it's a Family Strokes, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Family Ties, maybe? I'm not sure.
Family Ties, yeah. Because I know that he was filming that whilst doing Back to the Future at the same time, and he was doing 16-hour days where he would do 8 hours of one, 8 hours of another, and they said he was near breaking point by the time he got to the end of filming.
Yes.
But he was workhorse back then. So, but yeah, when he's put in front of the camera, he just has a charm, the apple pie smile, and everything about that. He does that kind of American teen kid very, very well. But in that era, he kind of defined what an American teen kid was for a lot of people that aren't familiar with the genre otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yes. This is a film that I first watched. Like I want to say early, I was 11 or something. I don't think I watched it when I was a kid. So it was. It's probably been about 10, 15 years since I've watched it. So yeah. It's not like a masterpiece or anything like that, but I just, for a turn your brain off fun movie, I really, really enjoyed watching this again. It covers all the basic narrative arc that you expect in a coming of age, teenage boy, school, comedy, drama thing, but if you don't mind that, this is I think it holds up personally. Also got some really great 80s catchy pop songs in it. So anyway, what else, Mark? Any other films?
Well, my next movie, a little bit more serious.
Okay.
I saw this movie pop up on Netflix, and I thought, you know what? I mean, based on the title, the actor, and the director, I'm going to check this out. This sounds interesting. Now, this would be the movie The Killer.
Oh, this is the new Fincher movie, right?
That's correct.
David Fincher movie. Yeah, I've seen mixed reviews, so I don't really know much about it.
Well, it's got Michael Fassbender in it,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a strong actor. I watch him in just about anything. And when I saw him attached to the idea of the story of an assassin,
mm-hmm.
I was genuinely curious. I mean, Fincher has got an interesting history.
Yes, he's made some like 10 out of 10 bangers, and he's also made some awful films, in my opinion. Awful films, in my opinion. I fucking hated Mank. Fucking hated it. Absolutely hated it. Looked great. So boring. And like, it was based on an era that fascinates me. The 30s. It was based on the writer of Citizen Kane, wasn't it? And like, I really wanted to watch it. I was really excited for it, and I watched it, and I just thought, this is just boring. I don't know. It had no substance for me. I don't know. Maybe you've got to be a certain kind of person with a certain amount of knowledge to appreciate that film. But for me, it really upset me. I wanted to love it. Anyway, sorry, yeah.
No, well, for me, this movie, I mean, I've always been rather flip-floppy in terms of my tastes with regards to some previous Fincher's movies. I mean, you know how I feel about Fight Club, or you may not know how I feel, because I seem to change my opinion of that every time I talk about it. I genuinely can't decide if I consider that a great movie or not. It's very difficult for me. Because Fight Club was a movie I watched at a very young age, and it left a great impression on me at that age. But as I get older, I sometimes wonder, is it too edgy? Is it too much? And then other times I'm like, no, it is a good story. It's got style. It's got sort of like an interesting story that I hadn't seen before.
It was a book first, wasn't it?
Yeah, Chak Palahniuk.
I've not read any of his stuff. I need to. It's due reevaluation for me, actually. I need to read the book and then watch the film.
I will say that the author has, because the story in the book and the story in the movie diverge, and the author has actually stated that he prefers the movie ending.
Mm-hmm.
So make of that what you will.
Yeah.
But that I will say that Fight Club does have style. It does have a certain something to it. And I thought, we're going to get a movie like that about an assassin played by Michael Fassbender. This would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then I experienced something which I'd never had a term for, but I pretty much created it for this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's expectation whiplash.
Okay. I'm getting this image now of you like sitting down like in your seat, like really like extravagantly in your couch, sitting down really quickly and like leaning forwards, and then the film starting and you're still going as it draws you in, and then the film starts and you just get thrown out of the seat and knocked out. Anyway, sorry.
This movie,
in a bad way, I mean.
It isn't a bad movie. This is the thing. It's just it wasn't the movie I was expecting.
What was you expecting?
I don't know. Maybe I was expecting something a bit more stylized, a bit more action-packed.
He doesn't make those films anymore, dude. He never made those films.
No.
He's always made very moody, often somber, depressing films.
This is true, and I really should have reminded myself of that before I started watching.
Yeah. I mean,
I saw the hallmarks of his directing style almost immediately, and that was the moment when I went, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not to say I didn't enjoy the movie. It was.
Oh, okay.
It was still an enjoyable movie. It was just I went in with the wrong mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And what you get is a story where it is played utterly straight and utterly realistic as to what a professional killer would be like. In terms of a man, the majority of the movie is played with internal monologue, speaking over the scene, because he is a man that spends the majority of the movie by himself.
Yes, okay.
And he's explaining himself, explaining all the things he does. I mean, literally, the first 10 minutes of the movie are him just in a construction site building across the way from his target, where he's just doing yoga. He's sleeping. He's regulating his heart rate. He's getting ready. And it's just him talking about all the ways in which he takes care of himself to make sure he is in peak physical condition so he can perform his job. And then if something goes wrong, something goes wrong, it's his mantras that he repeats to himself to constantly make sure he doesn't mess up. He has the one he constantly goes back to over and over again is, what's the word? Oh, you anticipate, don't improvise. And it's all about all the safety measures he constantly has in place when things don't go the way he's planned. And then eventually the actual conflict of the story occurs wherein he messes up a contract. He doesn't kill his target. Mm-hmm. And then other people get put onto the contract alongside him, and they decide to keep him away from the target by attacking his girlfriend, who doesn't know who he is. She doesn't know his job. She thinks he's just a businessman. And then it's him, not so much going on a rampage, but very systematically making his way through an organization to find out who it is that's attacked him. And once you get about halfway through the movie and you get the stride of it, you realize that, yes, this is exactly, truly, a contract killer would have to operate like this in the present day. It's not someone who would go in John Woo style with a pistol in each hand and then go sort of like skipping off into the sunset. It'd be someone who would be nondescript, would have numerous escape measures, would specifically act in a fashion that they'd only hurt or kill people if it was absolutely necessary. And once I got that vibe of it, it was still a good movie to watch. There's some brilliant actors in this. I mean, Tilda Swinton's in it, and she was very good.
She's very good. Yeah,
she's always a very strange sort of like actress to watch because she never plays normal, and I kind of appreciate it for that. Every time I see her, she is playing something that's outside expectation. And this was another one which I immensely enjoyed watching her in. As I say, it's just a movie that I went in with the wrong mindset. I'll hold my hands up and say that's on me.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Yeah.
Fun action movies, never associated that with David Fincher, ever, personally. I mean, even the closest I would say, maybe The Game, but that's still quite dark, and quite intense. That's a great movie, actually. Great movie.
That's a classic, yeah.
Yes. All right, that's interesting, Mark. Okay, cool. I actually do want to check that film out. It's on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
I should get around to it. So, you mentioned that there was something bad that you'd watched.
Yes.
What was it?
This has got a touch of a through line to the previous movie. And it's a film called Manodrome.
Manodrome?
Yeah.
I've never heard of it.
I did not enjoy this movie, man.
What is it?
It's a movie by a director called John Trengrove. It stars Jesse Eisenberg and Adrian Brody.
Okay.
Which those two, they're quite good actors. I say quite good. They're accomplished actors. It's the way in which it's got a through line to this one is because I get the impression that the director of this one might be a fan of Fight Club.
Okay.
But this is a movie that maybe took all the wrong messages from that movie.
Okay.
It's all about a man who he's a taxi driver, goes to the gym, and he's a man that has a lot of unresolved aggression. He's angry, but he's not quite sure what he's angry at. And through the early parts of the movie, it starts to build up that he has a lot of anger within himself. He kind of like veils it in the likes of being homophobic and racist. And through the gym, he starts to find other like-minded men who kind of talk to him about the fact that he needs to focus his masculinity for a positive outcome. He needs to build himself up rather than tear himself apart. And in the middle of this, his wife gets pregnant, or his girlfriend gets pregnant even. And he's dealing with the fact that one side of his life is getting ready to settle down, and he doesn't want to. He's not ready for that. He's got too much anger inside him. He wants to be something else, but he's not quite sure what. And through this, he gets drawn into a cult that's run by Adrian Brody that celebrates men in terms of who they are. It's they all live in a mansion. They all lift each other up. They do mantras. They do support sessions until eventually he starts to go off the rails because he can't balance himself out anymore. He actually starts to lash out until eventually it devolves into a man having a full-on breakdown, tearing apart his home life, throwing his girlfriend out, and then eventually obtaining a gun and starting to kill people. And he goes on the run. And God damn, man, this movie was fucking dreary. It was just
really
I watched the movie and I kept thinking and hoping that it was going to build up to something meaningful, and it just doesn't deliver. What I've described to you there, you can see what I mean about the fact that it's written by someone who clearly has aspects of Fight Club in mind, because it has the whole sort of collective of men. It has the idea of a man sort of trying not to self-destruct, but instead self-improve and actually try and build himself up into something more that's not attached to other people, but attached to himself and to his gender and everything. And it was just painful to watch, man. I really found myself getting about halfway through, and I was like, this is not going to end well, but I've come this far.
So you finished it?
Yeah, I finished the movie.
Oh.
And the payoff was not worth it.
Fair enough. Never. To be honest, I think I've heard of it. I'm not really sure.
Thing is, I'm a forgiving guy for the most part when it comes to movies. I can forgive a lot in a movie if it has a good message. And I've watched some downright terrible movies and seen some positive in them, but I found nothing positive in this movie whatsoever. It just felt like I got to the end, and when the credits rolled, I found myself just thinking, what was my takeaway from that? And I thought, I got nothing to take away from that movie. It just didn't feel like the kind of movie that I'd enjoy. Or maybe I'm, once again, the wrong demographic, but I'm not quite sure who this movie would be for. I don't know. It just disappointed me significantly because, well, that said, Jesse Eisenberg, I feel, was somewhat miscast in this movie.
Yeah, to be honest with you, when you said he was going to be in it, he was in it, along with Adrian Brody, who is like a serious actor.
Brody's better cast, so...
I was getting an image in my... I was thinking, that's strange casting already. And then when you start telling the story, Jesse Eisenberg plays the titular psychotic character, whatever person who has a breakdown, right? Or is it Brody?
No, it's Eisenberg. And, I mean, I've seen him in plenty of movies, good and bad, but he has a certain style that he kind of sinks into in terms of characters that he plays.
Yes.
And this one feels too far removed. It's not the kind of person I'd expect to see in this sort of movie. I mean, Adrian Brody does. He fits his role relatively well because he's meant to be a charismatic, for want of a better term, cult leader.
He's a very good actor as well, to be honest with you, mate. He's a very, very, very good actor.
And he encompasses that character. He does it well. But I just don't think Eisenberg was the right call on this one.
Okay.
I mean, but it's not because of that casting that this movie is not very good. It's just the writing's terrible. You know, I'm not one to sort of like rant on about a movie too much, so I won't go too much on this one. But very much do not recommend.
Okay, well. It's a shame, really, but never mind. That means you've warned me off it. All right, okay. Well, we've been talking for a little bit now, so I think it might be high time to pop into a break, and then we'll continue with the episode. So be right back. Welcome back to the podcast. So, there is something that I've been into over the last year or so that has somewhat culminated into a watch this week. I first watched this anime movie a long, long time ago. Mark, you will remember it very, very well. And I went and then read the novels that inspired the original anime movie, and that is Vampire Hunter D. You remember Vampire Hunter D?
Yeah, man.
Do you have much to say about it? Because it's probably been a long time since you've seen it.
It's been a very long time since I've seen that. I think that was teen years for me, man. I've watched a lot of different stuff since then. I could barely recount the plot to you.
Absolutely. Well, Vampire Hunter D is actually like a teen novel series generally written for boys, Japanese in origin. And the animated movie itself, which I believe came out in 1985, I want to say, it was based on the first of these light novels. Hideyuki Kikuchi is the name of the original author. The books are also famous for the use of the Final Fantasy artist Yoshitaka Amano. His very recognizable style. You know, D, this vampire hunter, is very like feminine in appearance, isn't he? In a sense, he's got like long dark hair and wears like a bounty hunter's hat and has like a long black cloak, and he rides a horse and whatnot. And you know, the style only used for illustrations in the novels. Suits the character very, very well, but it's set in a post-nuclear Holocaust world, and where vampires, known as the nobility, let's say, end up rising and taking over man. And over a long period of time, man is like, you know, they exist in like pockets of, you know, towns here and there, and they're preyed upon by the nobility, let's say. And there are plenty of vampire hunters out there who are, or monster bounty hunters, let's say, who are paid to protect these people trying to survive in this awful, awful world. One of the things that I do find quite interesting about Vampire Hunter is the world itself. It is a mixture of post-apocalyptic, dystopian science fiction and fantasy and horror all in one. There's technology, and yet there are werewolves, and yet there's like these giant post-apocalyptic landscapes and fantasy monsters and gore as well, let's say. So yeah, the world building is really interesting. The novels themselves are, they've been going for a long time, and they've been translated in the last few years by Dark Horse in a series of omnibus collections. The first collection, first 3 stories, the first of which is what is based on this animated film is based on. And they're very horny stories. To be honest with you, Kikuchi is literally in love with his protagonist, as is every other woman and man in the story, bar none. He's beautiful, permanently beautiful. But an interesting character. I would recommend personally watching the film Bloodlust, which is based on the 3rd story in this collection, Demon Death Chase. That has actually got a really interesting story. I'd recommend you watch it again. This one is okay. It's about
that on Netflix.
No, you can find both of these films on YouTube.
Okay.
Very easily. They're both worth watching, really, but the first film's a bit of a mess. You've got Count Magnus Lee, the evil vampire who's involved in this story mainly, and he picks Doris as his next victim, and then he bites her, and he has a certain amount of time. She has a certain amount of time to kill him before she completely becomes a vampire. So she hires D to help her do the task. And, it's only about 200 pages long, if I remember correctly, and it is very much just about D trying to deal with killing Magnus Lee. Now, Magnus Lee is like 9 feet tall. He's got a daughter who's crazy, hires his own bounty hunters to stop D. There are various monsters that Kikuchi has created. The sisters, who are like weird snake creatures that suck on the life force, are really actually fascinating and really cool. But to go into like massive spoiler territory here, which is always the case of this podcast, the great thing about this original story is the lore, the setup it creates, because Magnus Lee is one of the nobility of this lineage of vampires who have ruled over mankind for years, and he has picked this human woman, and basically the idea is that he's going to marry her when she becomes a vampire after biting her, and his daughter Lamika detests the fact because she is obsessed with the history of the nobility, the royalty. She believes that humans are unclean, and to bring human blood into the vampire bloodline, let's say the bloodline of the nobility, is sacrilege. And so she's against Lee, her father, marrying Doris. And she hires a bounty hunter herself to kill Doris to stop the marriage happening. So Dee has to deal with this as well. And there's a really cool concept, actually, of when Lamika's like completely found out, and Lee expresses his motives for claiming a new wife every, I think it's 200 or 300 years. Can you guess what his motive is, Mark?
What's that?
Can you guess what it is? Just out of interest, what would you think it would be? If you can.
For claiming a new wife every couple hundred years?
Yeah. What would you think his motive would be?
I can't think. I'm sorry.
Boredom. He's so old, and he's been alive so long, that one of the few pleasures is that he has left, because nothing interests him, is taking a wife and using her until she dies. And that's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a believable motive, actually. I'm not saying that that's right. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying that to be alive so long, have
the
experience
motives of immortals is something that's very difficult to put yourself in the mindset of.
Absolutely. But in the end, the only interest he has left is sex and love, and that's it. And being a vampire, he like claims a woman every few hundred years, and
Yeah.
I kind of liked it actually. Kind of humanized him a little bit. It made him think there's actually more to this character than just being the big bad villain. He's not like claiming Doris because he has to, because for whatever reason. He's claiming this woman because he is literally he's a character with motives, and and that makes him relatable. To be honest with you, in a crazy way, crazy way. What is also really interesting is this great double back on Limika, who's obviously against humans being inducted into the bloodline of the nobility. It's because you find out the origin of D himself. And do you have any idea what this is? Can you remember at all what
No,
this
I
origin
can't
is?
remember that. No.
No, he's the son of Dracula, the original vampire. So that sort of brings out this juxtaposition of he's a Dampire. That's what they called him. He's a Dampire. If I remember correctly, what they say. And so but he's also the son of the most powerful vampire in the history of the universe of this, the narrative. So that makes him very strong, very powerful, but also, of great lineage. And he's also a half-breed. So, yeah. Limika has a great. They both have moments. I think both of them, Lee and Limika, both look at this picture of Dracula they have on their castle, and they realize it's him. They realize D is their son, and it just causes them great horror and disgust because it's almost like everything they believed in is, comes tumbling down at the end, and it's a good twist. It's a good twist. It's a good twist. The anime itself is very close to the book. It's been a while since I've read the book and whatever, because I've read so many books since then. I think I read the first book about a year and a half ago, and I've gradually worked my way through this omnibus over the last year and a half. The main plot points are there, but apparently rearranged. But this is the original film was from like 1985, and the animation style is very reminiscent of 80s anime. It actually reminds me a bit of Fist of the North Star, to be honest with you, the 80s film / bastardized TV series. But yeah, it's cool. I really like it. I may well buy the next omnibus. Actually, I may well buy it because it's kind of like, in a sense, the Japanese version of Conan or Elric, in the sense that you have this protagonist who has basically got plot armor because he's in every story. There's 20 books, so like reading the first 19 of them.
He's not going anywhere.
He's not exactly. He's not going anywhere. But it's more about the world that he explores, the people he meets, the mysteries he unravels. Just as Conan is the same. It's about the monsters he fights and the people he meets, and how his weird code of honor and sort of affects his choices. And Elric is the same, as mentioned in the previous episode. Elric is the albino prince from another universe who's exploring his world and unraveling as he goes. And yeah, I really enjoyed the 3 books. Bloodlust, specifically the film, is I remember being very, very good, so I'll be rewatching it at some point. And I quite enjoy rewatching this film. It's aged quite badly because of it's very old now. But I don't know if I'd recommend it to a modern day anime fan, let's say, or a casual fan, should I say, who's used to watching whatever's out today. But
yeah.
For someone as yourself, yes, it's an okay curiosity. So, any anime yourself in the last couple of weeks, dude?
Well, I've got 2 personally that I've watched. So, the first one I watched, what happened is over Christmas, I managed to get past Christmas itself without getting ill. But
that's good.
I did come down with a bit of illness between Christmas and New Year, which only lasted a couple of days, but I was bedbound for about 2 days. To this end, I found myself just wanting to find something to occupy myself, and I reactivated my Crunchyroll subscription on Prime. And it is very easy just to sometimes scroll through the catalogue and just see something that grabs your attention, you press a button, and next thing you know, you're about 5 or 6 episodes deep in the show, and you think, well, I've come this far, there's 1 season, I'm going to finish the bastard. This is what happened to me when I found Death Parade.
I've heard of it, but I've not seen it.
Death Parade's an animated show from 2013. And it's one of those shows where in the intro sequence belies nothing about the show. It's very upbeat and happy intro music. It's got all the main characters dancing around. And yeah, the show is none of that once it actually starts. It's actually a very dark show set in the afterlife. wherein a character called Dekim, is a bartender and an arbiter. And what happens is people get sent to this bar after they die. And if they die at the same time, they have to compete against each other in really bland, normal games that all have a dark twist to them. And the whole point of the games is to push people to the edge, to ramp up their anxiety and their stress to the point where their true selves come out. At which point the arbiters can make a judgment as to whether or not they deserve to be cast out to the void or be allowed to reincarnate. As an example would be the first episode has a couple who both died at the same time. They both very much love each other. They come in, but the thing is they don't have their memories. They don't remember how they died. I don't remember a lot of their lives. They just remember the basics, that they are married and that's it. Then once they start playing the game, it's a game of darts, where each of the tabs, which would normally be numbered for different points, is attributed to a different body part. And when the dart hits it, it inflicts that pain on the other person. And when they realise this, well, for the first couple of darts, they intentionally miss until someone slips and accidentally hits the dartboard and inflicts pain on the other. And then the memories start coming back and they realise that maybe their marriage isn't as happy as they thought it was. And then it turns a little bit more vengeful and they start inflicting pain on each other and all the secrets start to come out until they're screaming at each other and they're fighting until it leads to a climax that results in one of them being cast into the void and one being allowed to reincarnate. And initially you think this is just going to be a show where it's a standalone episode each time with different characters in almost like a Twilight Zone style of like random stories playing out in this environment. But then you realise there is an overarching arc where we have Dekim, who is the arbiter, but he has an assistant called Chiyuki, who's a woman who's been brought to work with him, and her job is to observe and learn the role and to understand why the arbiters judge. And the show progresses, and there are times when it's downright heartbreaking. There are some moments that truly did get me. There's one episode close to the end where it felt like the majority of the episode just had the characters crying non-stop for most of it. But it was justified. It was part of the story. The point was they were meant to be going through that much sorrow, and it really touched me. It's not a show that I necessarily, if I'd read the synopsis prior, I may not have watched it because it didn't sound like something that I'd be into. But once I got drawn in by the storyline, it actually really, really interested me. There's a couple of there's some outright laugh out loud moments in it as well. It does have comical elements to it. You do get different arbiters who all have different attitudes towards their job, some of which are very blasé and just like, oh, for fuck's sake, let's just get on with it. Whilst others are a lot more empathic and actually understand and try and help the people that they're trying to save or judge. And I'd say I've only found one season of it. I don't think there was a second season, which is unfortunate because it is a story I wouldn't mind seeing more of. But by the same token, the one season does have a complete story in it. But that intro just utterly fucking lies. It just gives you this impression of a real upbeat, happy show, and it's not. It's quite upsetting, but in a good way, if that makes sense. I mean, there's nothing wrong with watching a show or a movie or reading a book that elicits an emotion that's not necessarily a positive one, if you feel that it touched you in the right way. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this story.
Okay.
So, kind of made me reconsider what I'd look for in an anime going forwards, to be honest.
Okay, that's interesting.
The other anime that I watched was one by the name of The Rising of the Shield Hero.
The Rising of the Shield Hero?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, this is from a subgenre of anime that's become a lot more prolific of late. There's a term called isekai.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah. Now, isekai is a concept wherein a character is transported from their mundane normal life to a much more fantastic, magical world.
I think you might have brought this up on a previous episode.
This is true,
yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And I realised at the time that isekai is actually something that's actually ingrained in a lot of classic stories in the Western culture as well. I mean, the most famous example of it would be Alice in Wonderland.
Yes, of course. Yes.
And once I started looking at it through that lens, I realized that yes, this is a concept that's been used numerous times throughout like history, whether it be Peter Pan with Wendy going to Neverland or all different aspects like that. But they all have, I believe someone broke it down to like 4 different ways. I haven't done the research on this, but there are different ways in which isekai can occur, whether it be through reincarnation, whether it be through transportation. There are different ways in which it can occur, but a lot of them do follow us a lot of the same tropes. Well, we're going to this one. It's all about a character that's in a library. He opens a book, and then a light starts shining, and the next thing you know, he stood in a throne room of a king with 3 other people stood next to him. And he's been transported to a world where they have catastrophes, waves of catastrophe that attack the kingdom. And they summon their heroes from other worlds using magic circles and spells. And each of the heroes that gets summoned gets given a totem, so to speak, a weapon. Now, you get the spear, you get the bow, you get the sword, and you get the shield. And the shield is considered to be a little bit of a lesser hero by comparison to the others because he's not capable of anything offensive. He's only capable of defensive abilities. And almost immediately you think, you know, this story, you think it's going to be just like, well, he's just going to learn to work with the others and become a respected member of the team. And almost immediately he falls foul of politicking by the king and by other high-ranking nobles in the government who don't have any respect for him, and he's framed for sexual assault. At which point he's exiled from the kingdom. And at that point you start to wonder, am I watching the story of the growth of a supervillain?
Mm-hmm.
In that he starts to become very angry, very withdrawn, very bitter, and he starts to swear about how he's going to kill everyone who's betrayed him, including the other heroes. Until eventually there's the introduction of a second character. He actually hires a slave at one point called Raftalia, who is what they refer to as demi-humans. I believe she's half human, half red panda or something. I don't know. She's got ears and a tail, but she's because he's not in a position where he can attack. He can only do defensive abilities and magic. If he's to level himself up, and that's one other thing that you see in a lot of these isekais, is that the characters often get a game system where menus will come up and it will tell them new abilities are unlocked and they're capable of new things.
Yes.
He needs somebody to attack because all of his skills that he can see are defensive abilities. So he buys a slave. And this is decried that he is a noble hero. Heroes shouldn't own slaves. And it's all about how he gives her a chance. She's been abused all her life, and she actually grows very attached to him because once he has her in his care, he doesn't abuse her. He doesn't bully her or take advantage of her in any fashion. He actually just tells her that I need you to be my sword. And in return, I will take care of you. And it's actually an interesting relationship. I mean, there are times when it is somewhat, I think the term would be ecchi, but you get that in a lot of anime, where there's hints of like being slightly perverted, but it's more from the point of view of the female than the male. He doesn't seem to have any interest in wanting to take advantage of her or anything. He purely is focused on his revenge. And in order to do so, he needs to get stronger. So it is the growth of him as a character and the discovering that there is more to the shield than he initially realized, that it's actually a much darker weapon. And that in becoming a more bitter and twisted person, he unlocks more dark magic from the weapon. And it's all about how she's trying to stop him from descending into madness and violence. It does turn into a little bit of a harem anime after a while, I will be honest. Which, take it or leave it. I mean, these things, it inevitably happens in a lot of stories. I know it is a little bit of wishful fantasism sometimes, whether it be the author or whether it be the market they're promoting it to. But this one isn't too heavy-handed with it. It's not as bad as some I've seen in the past, wherein it is just, there are times when you think, oh my god, has he got like 17 girls around him? This one, he ends up with about 3 at one point. But even then, they've all got motives and you kind of understand the point of it. And I've seen the first 2 seasons at this point. I'm going into the 3rd season and I'm still interested in the story. That it's still developing. The characters are evolving and they're actually fleshing them out in interesting fashions. I'm genuinely enjoying it. So it's unfortunate though that this isekai sort of like trend has really taken over a lot of what's on Crunchyroll. There are so many stories that utilize this. I actually started watching one the other day, which was more of a pastiche of it, where it's a character that is immediately aware of the fact that he's been sent to a magical world and he knows the rules of this trope. He goes, right.
It's like any trend, though, mate. Basically, you get one medium story, be it, in whatever medium, let's say, one genre story, and it's successful, and then another company, a rival company, sees that and they do something in a similar, and then they just bury it basically over a period of time until everyone's bored of it.
Well, this kind of has taken over the shonen style of the young boy with powers he doesn't understand. And
the first time I saw something like this, it was an anime series about a girl in an MMORPG, and it's 15 years old.
Sword Art Online?
No, XL Saga. Do you remember that? Never see that?
I never saw, but heard of.
Yeah, Abe recommended it to me. Abraham. That was kind of okay, but it got boring after a while.
But yeah, the MMO thing also got run into the ground as well. It's kind of a subgenre of the subgenre of the idea of being transported to an online virtual world as opposed to,
It's all on YouTube. It's also got this. It's got XL Saga has got the subheading "Quack Experimental Anime." Oh dear, I don't think I'll be watching that again.
But I get it. That a lot of these are meant to be escapism fantasy for the people that consume them, and I can see the whole kind of the attraction of watching a story which involves you being transported from your mundane life to a fantastical one, where you get a harem of cat girls doing your bidding. But sometimes it does feel like they buried the lead on this one. That's not to say that I didn't enjoy this one. I did. It's a fun story. It's got some interesting fight sequences, and I will finish season 3 because I've come this far.
Right, so we're going to have a quick break then. And when we're back, me and Marc are going to carry on just having a catch up. And I think the next topic of the podcast is comic books. So be right back.
Okay, so welcome back to the podcast. Next, we're moving into comic books. Is it Manga Man?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, so I've only got one really to mention in this one. It was a little bit of a big one for me, to be honest. I say big one. It was a bit of a coming together of a number of different books that I've read over the years.
Okay.
So this all harks back to one specific person, a gentleman in comic books that's known by the name of Mark Millar.
Oh, Mark Millar. Okay.
Now, he is a very polarizing figure.
Yes.
I've heard him sort of lauded as being one of the greatest sort of like modern writers. On the other hand, I've also seen him referred to as a bit of a pizza cutter in terms of all edge and no point.
Yeah.
It's difficult to say because I'm not going to deny I have read a couple of his stories that have really, really resonated with me. I really enjoyed them.
I can't think of any off the top of my head. Can you run a few off the top of your head, please?
What I'll do, I'll go straight to probably his best story, in my opinion.
Is that what you're bringing to the table today?
No, but this is what I'm going. We'll get to that in a moment. This is just kind of giving you a bit of backstory on him. But his best story is probably Superman Red Sun.
Oh, I've not read this yet. No, I really want to read it. I get around to that.
I enjoyed that story. It's one that really stayed with me. Bear in mind, it came out 20 years ago now.
Oh, do you know what? I'm going to put that into my fucking Amazon basket right now.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story. And it did introduce us to Russian Batman.
Yes.
Who is possibly one of the sexier incarnations of Batman. And he's been responsible for a couple of other things, like Old Man Logan, which that was somewhat of a polarizing comic when it came out. Some people liked it, some people not so much.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also at lead of Civil War when that first came out, and that was a troubled release in its own right when that first came out.
He was in charge of it.
Yeah, in terms of the plot and everything, they really.
I kind of got the impression with Civil War that they had this really good idea and they ran it into the ground and dragged it out at the same time and just didn't know what to do with it.
The general consensus belief is that they thought everyone was going to support the authority on that one, the
Yes.
government, and they didn't realise that at the end of the day, if you put Captain America with the rebels, and people are going to side with Captain America.
Of course they are, yeah.
Yeah, so they misread the expectation there. But aside from all that, Miller has also got a label called Miller World. And numerous stories have come out of this label. I mean, a lot of them have actually been adapted to the big screen. So the likes of Wanted.
Oh, Wanted, yep.
Kick-Ass.
Of course, yes, of course, yes.
Kingsman.
Yes. Kingsman was a Mark Miller comic.
Yes, it was.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, okay. Wasn't it its original name? He went by a different name back in the day.
The film was Kingsman, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was originally called The Secret Service.
Yes.
But it's more or less the same story.
Yes.
And they're good stories. I mean, often this is the aspect I've noticed with Miller is that he is good with ideas, although running them through to their natural conclusion is always a bit trickier for him.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, I've read some of his other stories. Some of them are good, some of them not so much. I mean, I really liked some of his other labels, such as Chrononauts, Magic Order, which has been adapted into a Netflix series, Prodigy. One specifically that stuck out to me back in the past I didn't like so much was Nemesis. Nemesis was the concept of what if Batman was a dick. Oh. And it's a guy that dresses all in white who his entire career is fixated about terrorizing police. He picks hero cops and makes them his project, wherein he destroys every element of their life over the course of a period of time with the intention of crushing their spirit. But he has the same resources, funds, ingenuity, but it was just so edgy to the point of stupidity. It was just, no. And funnily enough, we've Wanted another example of a comic that the movie adaptation did it better because they toned down all the edginess that was in the comic.
James McAvoy, right? I want to say.
Yeah, that was quite good. And also one of the first outings for Chris Pratt, of all people, as well. He was one of the supporting cast in that. Almost unrecognisable at this point.
Okay.
But one thing that came out of Wanted is it created a character called Wesley Gibson, who is eventually ends up taking control of a criminal empire. And at the end of that comic, which came out years ago at this point, I mean, it is literally, I believe, the early 2000s that comic first came out. Mm-hmm. He ends up in charge of the criminal organization with the intent of wanting to take over the world. Now, last summer, there was a release of a series called Big Game, which is the first crossover of this universe. And it introduces all these different characters, ranging from the Wanted label to Kick-Ass to Kingsman to Nemesis to Chrononauts. All of these characters being smashed together into one big crisis where Wesley Gibson is going to war with the world. And I had somewhat high hopes of this. I mean, it's got some characters in it that I really do enjoy reading the latest stuff they did, like Hit Girl. She's had a couple of runs in comics I immensely enjoyed. She's a very entertaining character to read about.
Yeah.
But this story really fell flat for me. I was really disappointed. I mean, one of the core plot points is the fact that the characters, the Chrononauts, are involved. And Chrononauts are two guys that invent time travel machines and end up pretty much going on a joyride through history. Mm-hmm. Now, once you bring the concept of time travel into a story, it weakens it, because then you realize that things can be rolled back really easily. In terms of things like when characters are killed off, for instance, you know that it's not necessarily, they're not going to necessarily stick to that. And in comic fashion, they don't. They utilize the time travel elements over and over again to give cheap reactions that they don't stick to. In terms of certain characters being killed off. In one scene, for instance, one character gets killed off. They don't even hold on it for more than about 3 or 4 panels before they've already rolled it back with the explanation of, we've got a time travel machine. Don't worry about it. It felt like the whole point of this was just as an excuse to tick boxes in terms of inserting each one of its major characters into a story. And a lot of these characters don't click together. They're not, even though they're all done by the same writer, they're not part of the same universe to my mind. Like the idea of Eggsy from Kingsman. He doesn't necessarily fit into a superhero story. He's more of a pastiche of the James Bond era.
Yes.
It doesn't gel well to me. So when he suddenly turns up, teaming up with Hit Girl, and the two of them are assaulting a criminal base, it just seems a little strange. The tone is really off. Which is unfortunate because I did go into this with some expectation. I'd heard that it was going to go big, as the name suggests. But nah, by the end of it, I was left a little disappointed.
Oh, that's a shame.
It's unfortunate. I'm usually pretty forgiving when it comes to a stupid story. So I can accept a lot of things. I mean, now I liked Avengers versus X-Men. So
why was that stupid? Because like I have like considered reading that many times over the years.
there are some good aspects to Avengers versus X-Men, but even in the blurb at the beginning of the each comic, they're pretty much saying, yeah, this is more or less just an excuse to have the Avengers and the X-Men fight. We want to just pair off the most interesting characters and see what happens when they go at it. And you know what? When a comic's that up front, fuck it. I'm with it. Sometimes it's the same. Sometimes it's the reason why we turn out for this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, that was my main comic read recently.
All right, okay. Well, that's a shame. I've got something slightly more positive. Maybe not. We'll see. It's left me sort of feeling a bit unsure. So when we were kids, there was a couple of manga video OAVs or OVAs that were released that we were both quite big fans of.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was Battle Angel Alita.
Ah, yes.
Yes. It's a great OVA, like 45-minute, whatnot. And, I was very aware at the time, even as a kid, that it was based on a manga. And I was also very aware that James Cameron was trying to make a film out of it. He was trying to make a film out of the manga for like 20 years before it finally happened. I can remember my father telling me about it. How strange is that? But about 2 years ago, I finally took the plunge and started reading the manga, which has been published bit by bit by, I think it's Kodansha, I think they're called. Let me just double check that. Kodansha USA. And yes, Kodansha Comics. And it's been released in like 6 absolutely stunning hardback volumes. So the original mangaka is Yukito Kishiro.
Mm-hmm.
And they say he started this in like 1990. And the original run was like 1990 to 95, which I was surprised about. So, yeah, this is basically a cyberpunk Pinocchio story, isn't it?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right on that one.
Yeah. You have the city of Zarlem, which is like this utopian world that is viewed from the world below by the scrap in the scrapyard, let's say the people in it, who just sort of fight amongst themselves for the scraps, to use another phrase, to live. And what is it? Is it Zion? Did I just say Zion? It's Zion, isn't it? Zion like drops their junk onto the world below, which is why like the area below it has become known as the scrapyard. And one of the pieces of junk that is dropped onto the scrapyard is a cyborg girl, which is discovered by the cybernetic scientist Odo. Edo? Odo. No, it's Edo. I'm getting names mixed up. It's not good, is it? It's Edo. And he basically brings this cyborg cyborg girl back to life and gives her a chance at a second go. At the beginning of the story, if you remember, she has no memory of her past, does she?
No, she's totally blank.
Yeah, and then over time, she starts to remember. There's that great twist where she discovers that Edo is like a bounty hunter and is paid by the government above to like take out criminals or cybernetic body thieves, let's call them. There's this criminal like world that goes on in the scrapyard where cyborgs and most people have got cybernetic implants, but like those with more human parts are often like killed and murdered and their body parts taken and then sold on the black market. And he's often, and then there's a never-ending cycle, let's say, on the black market with cyborgs, body parts, blah 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 blah. And like sometimes this leads to like monstrous creatures, and he's like one of the many. They're called hunter warriors in the anime, but I think they're just called hunters in the manga, who are charged with stopping them. And then there's that twist, isn't there, when Alita catches him, and then is suddenly, and she's like a small girl, isn't she? Like she's got this big black hair and big brown eyes, and she sort of comes alive to rescue him, and ends up fighting like a maniac and completely destroying. Is it Goyishka, the guy who's like who Ido's trying to like to stop, and then that's when her like she starts to awaken, isn't it? In the anime. I can't remember if the live action film too well because it's been a few years. I did see it at the cinema though. I remember liking it.
I did too.
Yeah, it's a good story in the end, isn't it? In the grand scheme of things, and the film was well cast, but maybe we'll get to that another time.
Yeah.
But it's Alita has got like in her previous life she was like a practitioner of this martial art called Panzerkunst. And it enables her to do like crazy stuff. So, but yeah, the core story of the film and the core story of the manga video OAV from the 90s is the story of Hugo, isn't it? Do you remember the boy who is just who dreams of going to Zarlem because of his brother?
That's the one she chases up the cable.
It's very brutal, isn't it? Yeah. And what happened? And what it is that his brother builds a balloon ship to fly to Zion, and he's killed. And he then the younger brother Hugo continues this dream, and like Alita is like kind of infatuated with him because of his boy like innocence and his obsession with just this dream that he has. I don't think she quite understands what dreams are at this point because she's just happy with her life with Ido, in the scrapyard. This is before she like starts remembering her past and starts remembering how to fight. And then to spoil the story, Hugo ends up becoming one of these body organ black market criminals, and he's caught, eventually killed, and then Ito saves him and turns him into a cyborg himself, which is horrific for him. And then he gives up and then just goes, I'm going to Zion. And he tries to... Zion is held up from the scrapyard by these giant, these cables, let's say, massive metallic cables, which have got these, vermin traps running up and down them. And he basically goes up there just goes up manually, doesn't he? He just climbs up up the cables, and Alita chases after him, because, she realizes that she loves him, doesn't she? It's very sad. It's very beautifully done.
I remember that scene of him just stood there with it whipping down behind him and him not looking and staring at her.
Yeah, the moment he realizes, isn't it? The moment he realizes, and then she has to let him go. It's awful. And the film, I remember the film doing it very well. It's exactly the same in the manga. It's just that in the film the events are a bit different. So in the manga, the storyline goes on for quite a while. Let's just put it this way: the sequence when she's a motorball, rollerball, whatever you want to call it, superstar. That's all happens in like the second and third volume, and then later on in the story, after fighting through and getting involved with a series of other bounty hunters and criminals, she ends up being hired by the government above from Zion. Zarlan? I keep saying it wrong. This is terrible. I'm getting it mixed up because in the film, I'm pretty sure in the anime they call it Zion, and I think in the manga they call it Zarlem. So it's just bad translations. Zarlem, I'm sure it's called Zarlem in the manga, and she ends up being hired to kill important criminals for quite a lot of the story. There's also this other human interest called Figure 4 in the manga, who also knows Panzerkunst, who's in it for a bit. But yeah, if I'm honest with you, the story sort of, in my opinion, flounders quite a bit in the last couple of volumes. I find that there's not really any direction, and the Kishiro says that he had a plot overall in mind when he was writing / drawing this, but I don't know. I'm not really too sure. It's kind of a shame, really. He got really ill towards the end, and he basically ended the story by awful means. He killed her off. Right? He kills Alita off after she succeeds in most of the things that she was trying to do in that particular story arc. It's really bad. It's really, really bad. And then when he became well again, he sort of did a retcon short story to try and finish the series again. And then he changed his mind again. And now we're at the point where there's 2 more volumes that have continued the story. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm not really sure how I feel about reading more of it at this point.
Do you wish that he'd kind of lent into his first decision and stayed strong on that one?
I don't know. He was ill. I've sort of looked into it because in these wonderful hardbacks, there's like loads of interviews with him, and he briefly goes over why he did it, and it's due to mental health issues. Long story short, and I can kind of understand that. I kind of get that.
Yeah.
And it is a shame. But again, as I said to you though, it does. I don't know. Like the story sort of goes up and down in the last couple of volumes for me. Like, do you remember at the end of the film? There's this hint about who the great villain is. They do a Marvel Stinger teaser.
Oh, you mean in the live action?
Yes.
Oh wait, pans back. Is it Jude Law who plays it, or someone, Ewan McGregor? Or
I
someone
can't remember, but the
I know
characters.
It's someone that's looking down on the actual hint.
Yeah, like that sort of set expectations for me for that character, and the character of Destiny Nova is not what I imagined him to be whatsoever. I'm telling you now.
You kind of expect some sort of Machiavellian sort of like.
No, he's a mental scientist. He's just a mental scientist.
Oh, that's
literally.
Yeah.
I was like, really? This is Destiny Nova? This is the great villain? But I don't know. There are some pretty nice twists though, because like you get the impression that people from Zarlem are different to everyone else. They have that mark on their forehead, don't they? And the actual like big twist is actually revealed within like the first like 5 volumes, and it's really good actually. It's very good. I was like, oh, that's actually quite horrific actually, if I'm honest, but. Yeah, I'm not really sure how I feel about it at this point. Yeah, there's the following story is called Last Order, and from what I've read online, it's more focused around the rollerball game, and apparently it sort of turns into like more of a shonen fighting. I mean, there's always been fighting in Alita, but it's all about getting more powerful and all this kind of stuff that happens in like Dragon Ball and stuff. And what people generally tend to say online is that. It's fine, but it's not as good as the original. And then there's the final volume that he's been working on, which he's been on hiatus for a year, I think, but he's picking it up again in a couple of months. It's called Mars Chronicle, because in Alita's previous life, she was a person called Yoko, and you find out that she was like a terrorist, and it's to do with Mars. So it goes more into her backstory, supposedly. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about it at the moment. Not really sure how much more I want to read. I don't know. Not really sure. Like, for me, the Hugo story arc is the best part of the whole thing. That is genuinely really well done and really well written with great characters, and the film performed it admirably as well. They just, to make it last the whole 2-hour film, they incorporated a few sequences from later on in the manga. I can't really say that I don't know if there's anything in the later volumes that reaches that. She does start to become quite reflective in the later volumes of the first part, and starts to question whether or not she wants to be normal or a warrior. But then when fighting, it's like, I'm a warrior, fuck it. And it's like, I don't know. No, I'm not sure. As you can probably tell, I'm a bit confused about how I feel about it overall. So, I would definitely say give it a read though, because the artwork is incredible, especially in the latter part of the first series. Like in the early volumes, he's quite sketchy, quite 80s, and in the 90s, his style starts to get a bit cleaner. Still has like his style, let's say. You can tell it's him. Alita always has the big eyes. He's always been very expressive, and he's actually quite good at comedy as well. But like later on, some of the artwork is really impressive. The way he draws technology, scenes, the action scenes are quite well drawn as well. It's good. I'll definitely say give it a go. But yeah, I'm going to be honest, like, because they're umming and ahhing about making more films, aren't they? Or talking about it. There's these rumors that come up every now and then. Have you heard those rumors? That there's another. Yeah, every now and then there's like, oh, the next Alita film's on the way. But if I'm honest, the best story's been told. Really? I don't know. I'm not really sure how I feel where there is to go with the next part, really. I mean, don't know. I don't really know what to say about that and how I feel. So, yeah, a bit iffy on that one, really. So, yeah. Anyway, so you were telling me today that you got a bit of a surprise for me for this next section we're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, wanted to try something a little bit different. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd say this podcast is essentially aimed at studying narrative, and across a wide range of mediums. Literally,
As I say at the beginning of every episode, yes.
exactly. And I was thinking about that. I mean, narrative is a general term. It's something that can be applied to all sorts of different types of entertainment. And I wanted to try and get a little outside the box on it on this one.
Yeah.
So I decided rather we would try something in music.
Okay.
So, I mean, narrative has been used to good success in music in the past. I mean,
is this is this a song or is it like a music video?
It's a music video, but it's essentially the song itself.
Oh, okay.
Not much actually happens in the music video other than the performer performing the song.
Okay.
It's well, the actual artist itself is a gentleman by the name of Ren. So
rings a bell for some reason.
Well, he's a Welsh rapper.
Right. Okay.
Who plays guitar.
Okay.
And Ren has had a bit of an unfortunate history. Now, at a young age, he actually contracted Lyme disease. That was misdiagnosed over an extensive period of time. He was significantly failed by the health service. And as a result, he was diagnosed with various different types of mental disorders attributed to the symptoms he is experiencing from his condition. And this led to the likes of autoimmunity, illness. He experienced psychosis, that sort of thing. But he's also channeled that into his music somewhat.
Okay.
And he's a very interesting... he gets defined under so many different aspects. I mean, I've heard him defined as being a folk singer, despite the fact he is very much a rapper and a guitarist. And this video that I wanted to show you today, because what my intention is here is to show you, for us to take a break, for you to check out the video and just get your thoughts on this gentleman.
Okay, I'll give it a go.
I invite the listeners to do the same. If the gentleman's name's Ren, R-E-N, and the video in question is called Hi Ren. That's H-I space R-E-N.
Ren. H-I space Ren, yeah.
Mm.
Right. I have actually seen something of this fella before. So in my history, I have watched his sort of cover or reimagining of Bittersweet Symphony by the Verve.
Oh, I see.
Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
All right, you go and watch that as well.
Okay, then. Yeah.
That's 2 minutes 45. That's a bit shorter than what you've sent me.
Yeah, I know this video is a bit longer.
Because the thing is, like, in the last 10 years, a lot of, I mean, I'm going to sound like really out of touch when I say this because rap music isn't really my thing at all. I like Dr. Dre, I like Cypress Hill, I like that kind of stuff. But someone showed me an artist they were really into a few years ago, and it was, I can't remember their name, and they were rapping about street rapping, let's say, about everyday life, struggling with everyday life in London. And like the words were actually quite poetic and quite good. And like, well, I wasn't really into the song. Like, I got the message and I got the point of it. And Ren sort of struck me as that kind of person. Am I right? Would you say that's about the same sort of ballpark? Well, would you say?
I can see where that could be the takeaway with him. Yeah,
that's just the impression I got after watching that Bittersweet Symphony cover.
Ah, I see.
You know, that's okay, cool. Okay, well, I'll give this a go then. I'll give this a go. And then we'll be right back. Okay. Okay, here's my reaction to that, Mark.
Certainly.
Yeah, okay. So I can honestly say that I have not heard myself like anything like that, really. He's definitely got the folky guitar playing. I like the guitar playing a lot. And like the ambience of the song, you know, it was like a rap song. He's playing like the voices in his head. I get the impression that the context is about his illness, about his mental health issues,
his self-doubt,
and you know, whether or not he's got his creativity has value or not. Yeah, I quite liked it actually. I quite liked it. It's quite good.
As I say, I heard it with no hype, and I tried not to hype it up too much to you because it's the kind of video.
Well, I didn't even know what it was until you mentioned it. You didn't tell me.
Yeah.
You told me then, and then I was like, "Oh no!" I've actually heard some of his stuff before. Truth be told, I mean, like, I think the streets like popularized that kind of like white street rapping.
Yeah.
You know, and they sort of strike me as like sort of from that ilk. But this is someone talking from a very ignorant perspective. I am not educated whatsoever on this genre. I don't know much about it at all.
Well, this felt like something that was away from that chav culture. It's away from the street culture.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I would say that it was street culture. I should say, like, if you listen to the lyrics on his Bittersweet Symphony song, it is completely street culture. It's all about street culture.
I did go listen to that whilst you were watching this video because I did go listen to that video.
Yeah, it's all about street culture.
Yeah, you're very much the case. It's all about what Britain is all about, and so in that regard, that was an interesting video in and of itself. I mean, Bittersweet Symphony is a classic tune. But well, thank you for listening to the video, man.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure about his little chat at the end. I mean, like, you could tell that he's put a lot of thought into his words. So one must probably listen or read the words once or twice to unpack exactly what he is saying. But it's obvious that, it is something of a, he's talking about his own issues. Which,
it comes from a very personal place. So.
Yeah, but the performance, I mean, it is a music video. I don't know how much of that music video was live. It looked like it was live. I hope it was live because he sounded good. So, looking at the comments at the moment on YouTube, a lot of people really appreciate it and really appreciate how personal. Was this his first song? A year ago.
No, this came out quite recently. I think he's been on and off. He's been
no, it's 2022, mate.
Oh, my apologies.
It's not recent.
But he has been going for a little while on and off, from what I understand. Let me just take a look.
I'm looking 3 years. Yeah. Well, if this is when he was like actually, he's you got like there's some really old stuff on here, but like he's making himself like the USP of his product as well, which, is cool because that's the best way to like identify and connect with people. He's speaking to people about his issues and with his creativity, and he's in front of the camera and then he's talking directly to the camera at the end of it. And rather
than being a character or something like that, you're a bit more vulnerable than that.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm not really sure if it's the kind of thing I would listen to like on a daily basis or go out and about.
You wouldn't do it up on a playlist or anything like that necessarily.
I'm not really sure, mate. To me, it's like background. I mean, this is very unfair for me to say. I hate to say something like this about a piece of music that someone has poured their heart into, but like, in the end, music is not just something that is about emotional content. It's also like audio content, and they have to be, in my opinion, looked at separately sometimes. And like, in terms of audio, like I liked it, but I wouldn't like sit and listen to it.
No, it hasn't got that hook that you.
Not for me personally, no. Not for me personally, no. But I can appreciate that it's a good piece of music. Fair play to him. Well done. If for me personally, like I just need to sort of detect. I need to detect a certain amount of sincerity for me to like appreciate. And well, that could be unfair because I'm sure I've heard songs and gone and not liked it despite it being sincere. If it's something as like, how to put it, he is pouring his heart out in his music in this video and showing himself like completely naked, like in front of the camera, and I can always appreciate that, Yeah. So,
as I say, this
is great guitar. Sorry, just to say, mate, great guitar playing. I was really, really enjoying the guitar playing. Yeah, that's great. That's great. And the little he was doing whatever he was supposed to represent, I don't know, but it's cool.
Yeah,
it's cool. I liked it. Cool.
Well, this was sent through to me from my brother, who is he's an avid musician.
Yeah,
he loves all elements of guitar playing. And, he didn't hype it in any fashion to me when he sent it through to me. All I got was a link or messenger saying, "Mark, watch this." And at the time, I looked at the playlist. I was like, "Bloody hell, 9-minute music video, man! What are you doing to me?" Okay, fine, I can afford 9 minutes. And by about the third or fourth minute, I was quite engrossed. I was like, "Okay, I want to see where this goes." And as I say, it was something that I can't really compare it to much else of what I've checked out in the past. It's something a little bit new. So,
yeah, it's cool.
Hmm.
Cool. Okay then. Well, all right then. For our final subject, I've got a little video game I played recently, and I think it's one actually that you might actually be kind of interested in. I know you like a good walking simulator.
Oh yes, I do.
So, how about the concept of a walking simulator or also like, do you know about Zen games or cozy games as well?
Games where it's just there's no anxiety or demand in them. You just
Not
play.
really, no. And they're often based around like simplistic tasks that you repeat over and over again and get rewards for doing it. Like, I suppose you could say maybe games like Animal Crossing come under that, where you're just doing the same thing over and over again, and often it doesn't require much in the way of skill, but the repetition of it ends in reward, let's say. So this is a game that was recommended by the Backpage, actually, the Backpage podcast that I recommended you recently.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game called Arcade Paradise. Have you heard of this?
I haven't.
So the game basically starts. It's set in the 90s, and you play as the character Ashley, and you are working in a laundry. It's the King Wash laundromat. He's left to run the business while his dad, Gerald, is away. And he goes in, and it's all first person. The machines are there. You see people walk in and whatever. And like when you first start, you sort of have to get involved with doing the laundry, which means like picking up the baskets, putting them in the washing machine, waiting for them to finish, putting them into the dryers, and then like taking them out the dryers and then putting them on the side, and you get paid, and then whatever, and then whatever. And it's like the game is in like sped up real time, and then it goes on and it goes on, and that's all you do. But if you explore the laundrette, you'll find a back room, and in this back room is an arcade machine. And like from finding this arcade machine, the character Ashley slowly but surely builds an arcade business, and he has this small room open and lets people go in and pay money to use the arcade machine, and from that arcade machine he makes money. And with that money as a character in the game, you can then buy more arcade machines. And it's all done like in an interactive manner and like with great reverence to the 90s. So there's loads of like fake real stuff in it. So on the radio, there's loads of music that is performed by a band that is made to sound like artists from the era. Do you remember the song "Hurt" by 9 Inch Nails?
Yeah.
That bloody song that we've heard 1,000 times in all the clubs in Southend. There's even a song that sounds like that. There's a song that sounds like Green Day. There's a song that sounds like just almost every popular band you can think of in the 90s, just to really set the tone and the mood. When you want to order more arcade machines, you go onto a computer that clearly has something that's like Windows 95. And like it's very basic, and you interact with it and whatever. And then you order new arcade machines, and then the arcade comes the next day. You finish work, you leave, fade to back. You come to work the next day, and then you carry on running the laundrette and running the arcade. And as time goes on, there's actually this really cool storyline between Ashley and his dad, because his dad is like an overbearing businessman who expects more from Ashley, and Ashley's sort of like a failed student. But he's got a bit of business acumen about him, and he starts to realize that he can make more money from like these 2 or 3 arcade machines than the entirety of the laundrette. And so, without his dad knowing, with help from his sister, and from the money he's making from these arcades, he starts to literally turn the laundrette into an arcade bit by bit, and you convert the whole building bit by bit over the course of the playtime of the game. But it's all taken from money from the arcade machines. But here's the kicker, Mark. You can play the arcade machines. Every single arcade machine that you buy for this launcherette / arcade is like a riff on a classic 90s arcade game that you can actually play. So I mean, there's loads. There's Pong. There's like a side-scrolling fighting game. There's a twin-stick shooter. There's a puzzle bobble kind of thing. There are racing games. And they've all got like really funny, like weird names. There's even like, what is it? There's like a Pac-Man style game that's but dressed up like Grand Theft Auto. So instead of being Pac-Man, you're a bank robber, and instead of being chased by the ghosts, you're chased by cops. And like, it's really, really cool. I was absolutely like addicted to it, to be honest with you. I do believe that a certain amount of that addiction comes from the nostalgia by it. Because as yourself, you know, we're children of the 90s and we're children of the arcade era.
Yeah.
You know, I miss so much just like going down the arcade and there just being loads of fucking video games that I wanted to play. Because nowadays, you know, living in Southend, living near Southend Seafront, living near an arcade, there's just nothing down there anymore, you know.
Yeah.
But you can buy I want to say about 20 or 30 different arcade machines for this arcade, all different games and whatever, and you can like place them in this area. Where you place them, you can adjust the prices, the difficulty, and whatever, and like you can complete challenges on these arcades that give you points to spend on buffs for Ashley himself. So, you know, you could hire someone to empty the coffers because you do that manually. I actually always found it quite satisfying going around emptying the coffers, and you know, don't know what it was about that. And but yeah, over the course of the game, there's like this narrative that runs through it as well. A relationship between the son, the sister, who you communicate with via email, and the dad. And there's a few twists and turns, and I was actually really invested. You know, don't get me wrong, it's not. You know, it's not a masterpiece of storytelling, but like for like a simple like business simulation, that's what it is. You know, walking simulator. I really enjoyed it. You know, I would actually fully recommend if you ever see it on the cheap, Mark, just give it a go.
Okay.
See it for like £3 or something on Steam. Absolutely give it a go. Because yeah, absolutely loved it in the end. I played. It took about 25 hours for me to finish it. It's 15 quid when you buy it new, but I mean, I think I bought it on sale for like £7 in the end. There's a bunch of DLC for it as well. You can buy the soundtrack. Looking at it now, you can actually get the Kung Fury game for it as well.
Oh, I love that game.
Yeah.
Dedicate far more time than I expected to that one.
Yeah, not bad, was it, for like 50p? But don't get me wrong, yeah, this is not like SimCity. This is nothing as complex as any kind of business simulator whatsoever. It really is just like about, I think, giving you a taste of an era, but giving you something to aim while you're doing it, you know, but also telling like a very simplistic story as well at the same time. I mean, it's a trope, isn't it, of the era? Even in Bill and Ted, you know, they're like layabouts who want to make money their way, and their dad wants them to do this and that. You know, if I remember correctly, he wants to send them to like military school, doesn't he?
I think Ted wants to get sent to military school.
Yeah. You know, like the overbearing dad who's like boring as hell and doesn't respect.
Get the new kids on.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's all about that. But you know, I loved it. I was absolutely hooked on it and really invested in it, and I just loved the atmosphere. You know, just absolutely loved it. So yeah. That's our little catch-up session, Mark. How do you feel?
Oh, I feel that's actually quite enjoyable.
Yeah.
Kind of like bouncing between different things and just letting the conversation flow a little bit was nice.
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, we tend to open episodes with a little bit of a catch-up, don't we? But I am thinking about potentially removing that in future episodes and making our episodes a bit tighter and just having like a catch-up episode every few weeks, maybe, where we just have a free flow, let's say, about whatever we've been up to. So what do you think of that? Do you think it's a good idea?
I think that is, man. Yeah, maybe like once every 2 months or something, just come together and just...
Maybe like every 4th episode or something.
Yeah, that works.
I think maybe for the duration of this season, we'll keep it as it is, but maybe in the new season, when we finally buy some new microphones, We'll maybe try it that way. We'll see. So yeah. I suppose I should be telling everyone what we're going to be covering in the next episode. There's been a bit of a rearranging of ideas the last few weeks because of trying to make the episode for Christmas, bringing the Cormac McCarthy episode in and whatever. So I know we're going to release our video games episode last week, but we didn't. So, this week. The week the episode you're listening to right now is supposed to be the video games episode, so I think we're going to release that one next week. I think in the next in 2 weeks' time. So yeah, we'll be chatting about Super Metroid and the Stanley Parable. We recorded that quite a while ago.
Yeah, we've got properly out of sync. I mean, I'm starting to have to invent new verbs for the past future tense. But as I say, when we release it, we'll release it. I think that's one of the best.
Okay then, so for info on any of the music we've used in this episode, please check the description. You can follow me at Writer GM Groves on Twitter, X, Facebook, Instagram. Mark?
You can find me turning my room into an arcade centre, I think, after watching some of the footage of that.
Are you having a look, are you?
Well, I've kind of moved on from that. I'm now Googling how much arcade machines are these days.
Oh, they're expensive, mate. Every now and then I do have a little look. Like, there's a company called Arcade One Up who are releasing new arcade machines, so you can actually get yourself like a X-Men versus Street Fighter machine, which has got a Marvel Capcom one and maybe a Marvel superhero. They have 2 or 3 games built in one normally. And they are cheaper than buying original arcades, but they're still quite expensive.
You're talking a couple £100, yeah.
Probably more. Well, it depends. It depends which ones you get, because some of them are quite small as well. So I don't know. I'd love to, but maybe one day. We'll see. Anyway, if you want to read my work, please check out my website in the podcast episode description. There you will find articles, reviews, and some fiction. So without further ado, I will bid you farewell, and hopefully we will see you soon.
Catch you later.